And that is kind of an important topic with the fact that there are statistic was that I came across, and I've got that in our blog post too, is that over 53 million caregivers in the United States caring for family members or aging parents are unpaid caregivers. And that's huge. And with one of the issues with unpaid caregivers is that there's burnout. So Linda, you want to talk a little bit about what respite is and why someone might need it?
Respite is, well, it's twofold. There is respite for the actual caretaker or the caregiver. And as you heard from Pam's statistic, there's a huge number of unpaid caregivers out there, but it's also for the individual or the patient themselves. So there's respite in regards to preventing caregiver burnout, because that is a reality. When you think about all the responsibilities that comes into play with being a caregiver of another human being, the responsibility is huge. And with all the other stressors that we have in our life, caregiver burnout is real. And what happens when we have caregiver burnout, you no longer can be effective and objective in the care that you provide. So respite allows you that time to take a breath, to step back, and do some self-care. For the patient, it also allows them to also have the ability to either be in another environment where they may be able to get certain other amenities that they're not getting in their home environment. It also allows them a break from the normal stressors of being with that in that home where that caregiver is at. So it either can be in a different environment or it can be in the same environment with different people. Because even though the individual knows that they need care, it's a stressor to them because now they're dependent on someone else to provide that care for them. And that's a stressor. And they understand and they can see that it's a stressor. So sometimes removing them from that environment also helps them with their healing and with their ability to function as a patient in that caretaker's role or in that caregiving role.
That's a great point. Caregiver burnout is probably the number one reason why respite care would be a good idea, to give them some relief. But other things that could come up as far as needing respite. Maybe you have an out-of-town family wedding you're going to go to, or you've got a child's, college graduation, or they're graduating from the military, or there's something that's going to pull you away from performing your caregiver duties. And it may just be, temporarily for a few days, or it may be for a week or so, but those are also opportunities. Don't feel that you can never attend any of those things or leave or give up your caregiving duties. Just know that there is a service called Respite that's available to be able to help you cover those times when you can't be, or maybe you're expecting a surgery in the near future and you're going to be out of commission for a couple of weeks recovering from surgery. What do? You're the primary caregiver for that. So oftentimes in the hospital, we see this. So a patient comes in the hospital, they are the primary caregiver for someone at home, and all of a sudden we're getting all kinds of questions. Oh my gosh, who's going to care for so-and-so? Well, it's always good to have this backup plan in place. Have your plan B ready. Have your respite plan prepared so that you know who you can call, what it's going to cost you, and everything. That all you have to do is make that phone call to put that plan into place. So always good to have a backup respite plan if you are the primary caregiver for someone. So one of the things that comes up is respite care paid for? And unfortunately, there's one scenario where respite care is paid for. Otherwise, it is all private pay. I'm going to first mention some of the least cost-effective ways, and we'll have Linda talk about how it's covered with hospice, and then we'll go into some of the other places where you can get respite that will all be on a private pay basis. But some ways that maybe you can be a reduced cost or no cost at all would be a couple of ways. Maybe you have a community, neighbors, church family, friends or family that live close by that would be able and willing to do it. Maybe if it's just for a day or to run them to a doctor appointment because you have something else going on, maybe you can lean on that, your community of those type of people to be able to pinch hit for you. Second thing would be is there's a program, and we will share a little bit more about this in a future video, but there is a program out there called Share the Care, and that is actually a train the trainer program where you actually pull this community, church, family, friends, neighbors together and actually put a more formal plan in place for ongoing caregiving, not just for respite. So that takes a little bit more work, but that's also available. And here I'm going to just put a plug in for if you need a nurse advocate wherever you live, whether it's us or someone else in your area, this would be a good task to ask your advocate to do for you, is to help you put a plan in place for this respite benefit or the Share the Care program. So now we're going to get into, before I move into the paid plan, I'm going to paid respite, I'm going to have Linda talk about how respite is a covered service in hospice.
Yeah, one of the great benefits of hospice is the fact that there is a respite benefit. Hospice, under its philosophy of care, recognizes that family and friends, that it's a dynamically changing, highly stressful environment during this last journey of one's life, and that respite is needed in order to give relief and self-care to that primary caregiver. So hospice does pay for respite care up to 5 days, but it must be in a skilled facility, such as a nursing home, where the hospice has a contract for those respite beds, and that it is covered under the hospice benefit. So you do not have to pay for that skilled bed for that respite benefit. You do need to discuss it with the hospice if you are going out of town for a wedding, or if you need a break. You need to let your hospice case manager know that you're asking for respite, and they will make all the arrangements for that respite care in that skilled facility. You do not have to do anything more than to speak to that case manager and say, I need respite, or we're going out of town on vacation for 5 days. I need that. Anything beyond the 5 days would be at a private pay rate at that skilled facility, or they can bring them back home and then have respite paid for the remainder of the time that it's needed privately. But under the hospice benefit, there is a 5-day respite period for the patient in hospice. And it doesn't necessarily, it's not once every 6 months, it's not once every 3 months, it's whenever that individual needs it within a 14-day period. So they can have 5 days, be home for another 14 or 21 days, and need it again. And that's all related to that hospice benefit, because they want people to be able to feel supportive during this last journey of someone's life.
Is there any, Linda, with the hospice benefit, is there any restriction, say 5 days in a billing period or anything like that? Is there any restrictions on how often or how that respite 5-day respite?
Yeah, it's not. It's actually 5 consecutive days. You can have up to 5 consecutive days in any period of time, because their episode of care is 60 days. So it can be 5 days. You could have multiple episodes of respite care within one episode if the family dynamics change, if it meets eligibility criteria such as caregiver burnout, family dynamics change, unwilling and unable caregivers to be able to meet care needs. So there is the ability to have multiple respite care episodes, but it's only up to 5 days. But you can have multiple ones in the 60-day period.
Gotcha. Thank you very much for that information, because that's important, because that is the one and only way that we know of where you can get some hospice paid for. One thing I will add to that is Linda, talked about a skilled facility. So a couple examples, depending on where you live and depending on the hospice agency you choose, sometimes they have a contract with a local hospital. Like the hospice that's connected with the hospital that I work for is they don't have, they provide respite in the hospital. So they contract with the hospital. Now, there's other agencies that may have what we call a hospice house or a residential facility. And if they have the license for that, they could offer respite care in their facility. So it's always important, again, just ask your hospice agency how and where, do they provide respite care. So now we're going to move into where else you can get respite care that will, and all of these things that we're going to talk about now are all private pay. And so depending on what avenue you choose, it's going to, the pay could be different. So we'll go probably, I'll start from the least expensive. The least expensive would be to hire a private caregiver. This would be someone that's not affiliated with an agency or that. That'd probably be the least expensive, but sometimes depending on that person, that's going to be probably the most challenging. And in our blog post that addresses respite care, I also referenced to our blog post that talks about the pros and cons of hiring a private caregiver, and is it worth the risk? So that will go into more of the details on how to hire a private one, but a lot of times that might be a little risky if you don't know their credentials and depending on how you found them, but that probably would be the least expensive. Next would be to hire a private or a personal care agency that they would send, someone into the home. If you are maybe you've qualified for Medicaid and you've worked with your senior resource center, there may be, based on your qualifications, you may be eligible to get some state funded personal cares or housekeeping. So I don't want to say that you can never get those, but those are, you have to apply with the senior agency, and they will put you through a vetting process to see if you are eligible for any service to be covered by the state or your county. Lynn, anything you want to say about personal care agency and what they could provide, say, if you're looking for respite?
Yeah, it sometimes, depending on if you have long-term care insurance, some of the long-term care insurance policies will cover a certain level of personal care based on the needs and for a certain period of time, especially if it's related to a surgery or it's related to a terminal diagnosis. A lot of times there will be a carve out in those policies for personal care for a limited period of time. But you do need to check with your provider, your insurance carrier, in regards to that, to make sure that it is part of your plan. And a lot of times today, especially in this day and age, in regards to these personal care agencies, you really want to do your research, because not all of them are of the same model or of the same type. Some of these personal care agencies are accredited by Joint Commission, which is the same that agency or accreditation body that accredits your hospitals. Others are not. So you do need to ask, and we go more into that in the blog post in regards to what to ask for in regards to the hiring practices of these personal care agencies, along with the rates, because the rates differ whether you want 1 hour of care, 4 hours of care, 24-hour care, or weekly care. And the types of care that you want provided will also determine the rate that you will be paid and how you will have to pay them. But they are all usually personal, privately paid, unless you can add in your long-term care policy if you have one.
One of the challenges with hiring a personal care agency to come and provide respite care, again, like Linda said, make sure that you're discussing with them the type of services that you need, whether it's light housekeeping, meal preparation, assisting with the bathing. Now, where you might run into trouble here with a personal care agency is the aides cannot administer medications. They can remind, so if you have the medication set up in a pill caddy and the caregiver can say, okay, it's time for you to take your medicines. If your parent or your spouse can actually physically take them themselves, you're okay. But if they're having to actually administer, put them in their hand, those personal care aides,
they cannot administer the medication based on their licensure and the practice acts. They cannot administer, and they can only do a reminder. And a reminder is, sir, you need to take your 12 o'clock medicines before you eat your lunch. They can't even put it into their hand. They can't even take it out of the bottle. That all has to be set up. They have to be able to physically handle the medication themselves and physically take it themselves. You cannot put it in their mouth. You cannot put it in their hand. You cannot handle the caregivers cannot handle the medications in any way. They can only verbally tell them or remind them to take the medication under the State Practice Act.
And so if this personal care agency might be able to fit all your other needs, you might have to look at some alternatives to handle the medication part. And Linda, do you have any ideas of what they could do, not using a personal care agency, or if someone, maybe a family member or someone could come by and actually give them? I mean, it would have to be something other than that personal care agency, unless you're willing to pay for a nurse visits.
Right, you can pay for a nurse visit, which could get very costly, but there are now pharmaceutical types of queuing systems. There is a system right now that the pharmacy will automatically fill it, and then there's an alarm that goes off that actually tells you to take the medication. It dispenses the proper medications in a cup for the time period that you take it. It also records whether you've actually taken it or not. So there are systems like that. There is a cost to those systems, but again, this allows for the individual to stay in the home where they're comfortable, get the medications and be compliant with their medications, track their medications, and allow you to have personal care and keep in compliance with what those personal care agencies can allow their caregivers to do.
And HERO, HERO, is one of those type of medication dispensing and reminding systems. So we'll make sure that we put the link in there for that as well with the video. But that would be another way around that. The other places that you could go to for respite care would be a nursing home or an assisted living. Oftentimes those two facilities will offer a respite bed, you know, depending on how many days. Now, again, it's going to be based on their availability. You could talk to a nursing home a month ahead of time and say you're looking at respite on this date, and they may not have a bed. So, you know, these agencies or these facilities handle that differently. So make sure when you're choosing a facility, make sure that that bed is either guaranteed, or ask them how that's going to work, so that you're not at the last minute, you know, stuck with them not having a bed. So Linda, is there anything you could add to that?
It's just really important to communicate, especially with the pandemic, even though things have been relaxed, and a lot of what we call institutionalized settings, such as assisted living communities, skilled nursing facilities, or even hospitals, there is protocols on how many beds they're going to be having available, and how you're screened for COVID and or other diseases prior to even being allowed into that respite bed. So you do need to understand what are the prerequisites to be able to be allowed to utilize that respite bed, especially during certain times of the year, whether it's high flu season or where we may be having a surge in the pandemic.
And last thing to say about that is just, again, you're going to see a great variety in charges. Some hospitals will also do respite. Some hospitals, the process is a little bit more streamlined than others. So a hospital would be a last option. But again, all of these type of things are going to come with their own cost. So make sure when you're researching the proper facility that you need, the level of care that you need, that you're very clear on what your responsibilities are, like bringing in medications, all these type of things that they will ask you to do, plus, you know, what the cost. So they may, if there's wound care supplies, you may have to bring in all the wound care supplies. You're definitely going to have to bring in their medications. So whatever your loved one is going to need for that period of time that you need them to be on respite, you're going to have to provide all the supplies and the materials that they're going to need during that respite stay. So again, we're going to put some links in the notes there for the video. And also, again, please feel free to put a comment in there if you have a question about respite or another topic related to, you know, senior care or you know, supporting aging or adult children of aging parents, anything. Please feel free to drop a comment in there so that we can address that. We'd be very happy to do a video based on the questions that you have, because if we don't know how we can help you unless you ask. So please, there's no dumb question. And Lynn and I, between the two of us, with over 80 years of nursing experiences, there isn't anything that one of us has not seen or been through to be able to help you. So you're in really good hands, and we want to be able to help you. So with that being said, we're just going to let you see what our contact information is. And we're going to, let me just see here. Just share just our contact information so that you know how to get a hold of us. And again, we have all the videos that we have a blog post that goes with all our videos. Please feel free to go to the website. It's just yournurseadvocateconsulting.com and click on the tab for blog posts. All the blog posts and all the
Website, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, any way you're comfortable, please contact us. Call us. We'll be more than happy to assist you and provide you with resources and our infinite number of expertise. So let us know how we can help.
All right, with that being said, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up for today, but thanks for sticking with us and watching this video. Hope that it's been helpful and brought you some value, and we'll see you in our next video soon. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.